So, former President George Herbert Walker Bush was elevated from being a racist Nazi who was literally Hitler to being a great man whose grace and loveliness is a rebuke to all living Republicans who are racist Nazi and literally Hitler. He achieved this, of course, by dying, which is the one act a Republican can perform that the mainstream media approves of. And of course, you know, I don't want to talk about this too much, but we do have to note the times that the media, in reporting on the death of President Bush, it was in 94, that they just shamed themselves. The AP sent out a tweet, George H.W. Bush, a patrician New Englander whose presidency soared with the coalition victory over Iraq and Kuwait, but then plummeted in the throes of a weak economy that led voters to turn him out of office after a single term, has died. He was 94. It took him 2 days to class up and take that tweet down. You would think that when a former president dies, you might mention that he was shot down in the Pacific during World War II, that he oversaw the end of the Cold War, something like that. But no, none of that. It was just that he's, I like the fact that everybody has a personality. Everybody has some kind of way they can be characterized or, just pigeonholed. So it's fair to say George H.W. Bush had a patrician personality. But why is that bad? I mean, with the press, it was always bad. He was always out of touch. And whereas being Mr. Spock, like Obama, that was a good thing, theoretically. It's all in the way you look at it. Anyway, they brought back all the old mythologies, the fact that this total mythological story that was in the New York Times back in the day when he was president, that he didn't know what a scanner was in a supermarket. And that was supposed to show just how patrician and out of touch. It was sent in by a New York Times reporter who wasn't even at the scene at the time. It was never true. And of course, the Willie Horton ad, that is the big one. I mean, this is, the Willie Horton ad was an ad he ran against Michael Dukakis. When he beat Dukakis, he pointed out, Wait, he didn't. The ad did. The ad pointed out that Dukakis had released a guy on a program and he had gone out and committed murder. And the picture of the guy, Willie Horton, he was black. So, of course, immediately the left said, well, this is a dog whistle. So they're still doing this. Here's the thing you need to know before I just play a little bit of the press now still reporting on this. It wasn't the Bush campaign that put the ad out. When the Bush campaign mentioned this, they didn't use a picture of Willie Horton. And it was only the left who thought about the fact that he was black. The fact was he was a murderer. That was the big deal. Do we have this piece of little montage of the press talking about this? Yeah, play that.
This is also a president whose campaign, included the Willie Horton ad, the most famous dog whistle ad, until this cycle.
Bush and his allies made up the ground by attacking Dukakis as too liberal. Soft on defense, they said, and soft on crime.
His revolving door prison policy gave weekend furloughs to first-degree murderers not eligible for parole.
One was Willie Horton, who murdered a boy in a robbery, stabbing him 19 times.
The strategy worked. In the end, Dukakis lost 40 states, and Bush was president.
Do you think that the Willie Horton ad against Michael Dukakis ushered in a new era? Because while that is still a bad ad, when you look at it now, it seems tame compared to what kind of ads are on the air every 2 years.
It seems tame now, but that was something that hinted at racial animosity. It was certainly by no means George Bush's best moment in later years. He was not proud of it. The best he could say was, I make a differentiation between campaigning and governing.
I mean, this is so offensive because there's no one there. There's no one in the media to turn around and say, wait, let's go back to the assumption that this is a racist ad. Never mind the fact that the Bush campaign didn't even put the ad out. They never ran the ad. It was a third party that did it. And then Bush had mentioned this incident, but didn't put the picture of the guy up there. But the entire premise that if you show a black criminal, it is anti-black, is absurd. It's like the premise that if you criticize George Soros, you're anti-Semitic, or you criticize Barack Obama, you're anti-black. That's a ridiculous premise, but there's no one in the media to turn to anyone else in the media and say, you know what, our entire premise is a left-wing premise and it's nonsense. I have a couple of things I want to say about George Bush. First of all, I think it's worth noting that he was the last president from the greatest generation. He was a wartime guy who had fought In World War II, he was a pilot he was the youngest pilot, I believe, of a bomber in the Navy, a Navy pilot. If you want to read about his ordeal, read Flyboys by James Bradley, which is a wonderful book. During the battles in the islands, these horrible battles when they were trying to dislodge the Japanese, he did a bombing raid over Chichijima, which was, Iwo Jima was part of that island chain. And he hit the target, but then took flak and went down. Other members of his crew were killed. He was paddling out there in a raft for 4 hours while other pilots were taken by the Japanese, killed, and then cannibalized. The Japanese enjoyed eating parts of their victims. And Bush was fortunate enough to be rescued by a submarine, and other planes flew around him to protect him. He was a genuine war hero, and he won the Distinguished Flying Cross, I believe it was. And, he was a man of character. I mean, this is the thing I just want to get to, because I'm going to have some criticisms about some of the things he did. But I want to mention that his character was really something. I mean, he had served his country. He had been a businessman, an oil man. He became head of the CIA, a congressman. He was all kinds of things. Finally, vice president, and a loyal vice president to Ronald Reagan, whom he didn't really sympathize with or agree with, but he always said that Reagan was very good to him, and he was very loyal to him. I just want to play this one cut, because Dana Carvey was the Saturday Night Live guy who did the imitation of him. So Bush invited Carvey to his Christmas press conference and was friendly toward this guy who had been mocking him all this time, which I just think kind of shows you it was a different time, and that he was a man of that kind of character who could laugh at himself. Play that.
The way to do the president is to start out with Mr. Rogers. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Then you add a little John Wayne. Here we go. Let's go over the ridge. You put them together. You got George Herbert Walker Bush.
Dana's given me a lot of laughs. He said to me on the phone, "You sure you really want me to come there?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "I hope I've never crossed the line." And I knew exactly what he'd meant. And as far as I'm concerned, he never has. And the fact that we can laugh at each other is a very fundamental thing. I'm not sure on November 4th that the invitation would have gone out and had the same enthusiasm, but we're shifting gears, and I think he's given us a wonderful kickoff to what I hope will be a joyous, totally friendly, very happy, somewhat nostalgic, but Merry Christmas for everybody.
So, you can say, and you would be right, that Donald Trump would never have that kind of grace to somebody who had criticized him. But you also have to say that the people making fun of Trump and who have been making fun of George W. Bush and making fun of Mitt Romney didn't have that grace either. Their humor was a lot meaner and even more one-sided than SNL has been all these years, and comedy has been all these years. Back in those days, they actually told jokes about the Democrats as well, which no longer happens. But the thing is, after George Bush came Clinton, his son, George W. Bush. He's the only president besides John Adams whose son became president. Obama, and now Trump, which I think you can say the character, it was not the same. Of those men, I think only George W. Bush had a really good character, a character that one could admire. And George W. Bush became better in office, and he had gone through a period where he was not such a great character. But the thing is, these were not people who had faced the challenges that the greatest generation faced. I mean, after all, a generation is defined not because its people are any better than anybody else. It's defined by its challenges and the things that happen to it and how it's shaped by the way it meets those challenges. The challenges of our generation, my generation, and as I frequently say, I wish the boomer generation could die without taking me with it. But I think the challenges of our generation were the challenges of prosperity, the challenges of the success that the greatest generation won for us. And those are the times, that's the time when nations decay. That's when nations decay at their pinnacle of success. If you look at the Republic of Rome, it was after they beat Carthage, after they rose to a pinnacle of success, that they rapidly, with dizzying speed, descended into civil war and violence, and ultimately the Republic fell.